Is too much of a good thing a bad thing for the New York Giants? I'll explain what I mean coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase letters to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. Prize Picks, run your game. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find my written work. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, please, won't you consider subscribing to the channel? Click the little bell so that you are notified every time I post a new video, whether it be a full video or a short. And like the video, it all helps. And those of you who choose to listen to the Locked On Giants podcast on the audio platforms, a 5-star review is always appreciated. So thank you again. On today's Locked On Giants podcast, is too much of a good thing not a good thing? I'm going to explain what I mean about that in the first segment. It's just something that popped up and I'm like, I think it's worth talking about. And then in segment 2, we're going to take a look at some keys to victory for the New York Giants against the Cleveland Browns this weekend. Is the game winnable? It could, if certain things fall the Giants' way. I mean, am I going to pick the Giants to win? Probably not, but we're still going to talk about the keys. And then in segment 3, speaking of the Browns, who's the one player that if I were picking for the Giants, I would steal off of the Browns roster? And hint, it is not who you think it is. And I'll tell you who it is and why I would pick that player in segment 3. So that is our program for today. Again, welcome on in to everybody. All right, let's get started. Is too much of a good thing a bad thing for the Giants? Well, folks, I'm talking about wide receiver Malik Nabers. Now, Malik Nabers, the Giants' number one draft pick or 6th overall this year. The whole reason why they drafted him was to provide some more life into the passing game, because as you have seen through 2 weeks of play, the Giants offense is going to run through that passing game, and in particular, 11 personnel. So I got to thinking, I said to myself, are they relying a little too much on Malik Nabers in the passing game? Now, here's what I mean by that. Ultimately, and I'm actually, let me go back a little bit here. I go back to the days of Odell Beckham Jr. And Odell Beckham Jr. basically became the Giants offense. Rightfully so. I mean, talented receiver, a reliable receiver, had 1,000-yard seasons for the Giants, I think, in 4 of the 5 years that he was here. So I understand, why they did that. But the problem is when teams figured out how to slow him down or take him out of the equation, the Giants were pretty much left with nothing. So it became a case of, yes, you want to rely on, Odell Beckham Jr., but what's your backup plan if he's double covered or the other team just takes him out or he's injured? What's your backup plan? And I'm kind of seeing the same things start to develop early on when it comes to Malik Nabers. All right, let me give you some numbers. Malik Nabers is currently on pace for 120 receptions this year. He is tied for second in the NFL with 25 targets. They're tied behind Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams, who I believe just went on IR. Malik Nabers is 4th in receiving yards with 193. Now, to the young man's credit, he wants the ball. He wants to be out there. He'll take whatever he can get. But at some point, if everybody knows that it's going to be Malik Nabers, do you start to worry a little bit if you're the Giants? Now, for those of you who appreciate football history, the late Vince Lombardi used to have a saying that I'm going to run my style of game, my offense, my defense down your throat until you figure out how to stop me. The Giants, maybe they're thinking the same thing with Malik Nabers. Maybe they're just liking how this young man is getting open. Maybe they're liking just the whole game that he brings to the table. I mean, what's not to like, right? But again, what happens if the opposing team figures out how to stop him? Who do the Giants go to? Well, let's take a look at one group that really hasn't gotten involved in the passing game as much as I thought maybe they would, and that's the tight ends. The two tight ends, Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson, 2 catches, 21 yards. Now, to be fair, they've mostly been kept inside to help with the blocking. The run blocking, the first week of the season, not very good. Last week, a lot better. So they've been asked to block. But at some point, if you really want to have a potent offense, shouldn't you open it up a little bit more? Shouldn't you get more receivers involved? Just change it up so that the whole world doesn't know that you're going to go to Malik Nabers, that, defensive coordinators, you don't make it easy for them to stop your offense. So, it's kind of a catch-22 if you're Brian Daboll, the offensive play caller, because you want to get the ball into this young man's hands. I mean, he's shown how special he can be. You want to take advantage of his ability to separate or to slice the top off of a defense. But at the same time, what's your backup plan if he gets taken out of the game? If, God forbid, he's injured, what's your plan? And I just wonder if there is a plan. I mean, Daboll will probably say, yeah, we have a plan for everything. And maybe he does. But it's always good to change things up just to keep the opponent off guard, I think. And, is too much of Malik Nabers a bad thing? You can make the case that it is. You can make the case that it's not, as long as the young man is making plays. The other thing you have to watch for, I think, is that he doesn't hit the rookie wall. You get him so involved and now he gets hot and, does he start to wear out? I mean, these are just little things that, you have to think about. You hope that they don't become an issue, but you have to think about them if you're, planning an offense and a game plan and whatnot. And, all right, the Giants, Malik Nabers is a special receiver. But, Wan'Dale Robinson can get the job done. Not in the same way, mind you, but he can pick up yards after the catch. Darius Slayton can get you yards. Jalen Hyatt, who we have just not seen. And I wonder, a lot of you asked me about Jalen Hyatt and where he's been. Is it because Malik Nabers is getting so many targets and playing so many snaps? Could that be the reason why? I don't know. I mean, it's a thought. Probably has nothing to do with it, but it's something, if you're going to throw the ball to Malik Nabers 18 times in a game, there's not enough passes to go around to everybody else. So it is a thought that I had. But, look, the bottom line is as long as the chains are being moved and the Giants are scoring, that's a step in the right direction. Now the Giants just have to figure out to where they can score more than their opponent, because right now through 2 games, they've gone to Malik Nabers, quite a bit, and they've got nothing to show for it in the win column. So hopefully it breaks open soon. But yeah, just something to keep an eye on, I think, going forward, because you don't want the young man to get, so banged up that now maybe he loses a little bit of his potency. I mean, there's got to be a balance is what I'm getting at. And I'm not sure what that balance is, but just the whole situation reminds me of Odell Beckham Jr. when he became the offense, and that was it. All right, coming up next, what do the Giants need to do if they are to have any chance whatsoever at beating the Cleveland Browns on Sunday? I've got a few things that I'll suggest coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit fanduel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. The new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop for a visit with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the new Locked On NFL your second listen on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And just a reminder, after every Giants game, be sure to check out the Locked On Giants postcast. That is hosted by Jay Berman. Basically, what that is it's a quick reaction show that Jay does after every game. And, that kind of complements what I do here on Locked On Giants, because I can't get to record a podcast right away after a game because I'm, down in the locker room doing post-game stuff, whereas Jay could get to the postcast right away and just kind of talk about the instant reaction of a game, give you some thoughts and opinions. And then when I do my show, I can go in and I can kind of fill in, some of the blanks or give you a little bit more context on what happened in the game. So do check out the Locked On Giants postcast hosted by Jay Berman on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So check him out. He does a good job. All right. In this segment, what are some keys to victory for the New York Giants? All right. Now, disclaimer, I said that if the Giants did not beat the Washington Commanders last week, I would not pick them again to win until I saw evidence otherwise, that this team was heading in the right direction. I'm not picking the Giants to win, folks. I'm telling you that right now. Those of you who read my Why the Giants Will Win, Why They Won't, and a prediction column that I write every week on New York Giants on SI, I'm not picking them to win. Saying that right now. But if the Giants are to have a chance to win, here are some keys that I think are going to factor into who comes out on top. And I'm going to start off with the Giants pass rush against the Cleveland Browns' offensive line. The Browns' offensive line, in a nutshell, has not played well. It has been banged up. All right. There are guys on their injury reports, starters, who are just, not 100%. And they also have, Joel Bitonio, who hasn't played well at all. He hasn't looked like himself for whatever the reason. The Giants pass rush of particularly the outside guys, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter, and Brian Burns, they've been relatively quiet in terms of rushing the passer and getting home with their pressures. Now, you can make the argument that they've done other things to help some of the other teammates of theirs, but the Giants didn't dish out the contract that they gave to Brian Burns for him to be like a supporting cast member. So if you're looking for a week where the Giants pass rush of Burns and Thibodeau could potentially get started, this would be a really good one against the Cleveland Browns offensive line that is banged up and just has not been as, solid as it's been historically. So that would be key number one for me. Key number two. Now, I think the Browns defensive secondary is top notch. It's one of the better ones in the league. So you're going to have that interesting matchup, the Giants passing game against that Browns defensive secondary. So you ask yourself, okay, does it make sense then to maybe highlight some of the underneath stuff, the shorter stuff, and let those guys pick up the yards after the catch, as opposed to testing the Browns deep? Possibly. I can see that happening. And I think if the Giants' offensive line can hold up against the Browns' pass rush, which I'm going to talk about in a second, give Daniel Jones some time and see what comes of it. Now, speaking of that Browns pass rush, you've got Myles Garrett, who right now, Myles Garrett's his situation's a little iffy. He did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. He's got a foot issue, but I saw a report that he's going to try and play through it. So you want to see how that kind of works out. And I did an article over on New York Giants on SI about how Andrew Thomas and Jermaine Illuminor view that threat and the whole wide nine concept that Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator over there, likes to deploy. So they talked about the challenges and kind of how to stave those off. So if you want to check that article out, both Andrew and Jermaine gave me great information on that. But Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, those are guys you want to keep an eye on, obviously. And the Giants, the wide nine can be very, very tricky, because the further out a guy is, now you've got to figure out, okay, what's he going to do to get around you? The more space he puts between you and what you have to block, that can be tricky. So Garrett, if he plays, I think he's going to line up more so over Illuminor, if I'm not mistaken. I think Garrett is primarily left, plays, they move him around left and right, but I think Illuminor will probably see him a little bit more. I can't imagine that the Browns will want to put him up against Andrew Thomas. I think they'll put Smith maybe up against him, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. The other thing that the Giants absolutely have to do, they got to fix the run defense. My goodness. Last week, the Washington Commanders running game looked like the old Barry Sanders Detroit run games. And it just seems to be the same problem. They talk about run fits. They talk about, missed tackles. The Giants last week had 11 missed tackles, and I think 9 of them came in the running game. You can't have that. And if you can't stop the run, you ain't going to stop much else, So the Giants, they've got to do something about that. Now, it's a new team, new game plan. Shane Bowen, to his credit, he took it on the chin. He said, I could have made a few better calls than I did. He mentioned, he talked about playing so far off the ball last week against the Commanders and how that gave them a lot of space underneath. All of that's got to be tightened up. And I think if they can do that, maybe they get themselves a fighting chance, because look, the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, I think Cleveland Brown fans will tell you that he's not what they thought they were getting. So the Giants, is this a winnable game for them? Probably. You could say that. Again, do I think they'll win? I need to hope that they can play better and put together more of a complimentary game of football. We have not seen that yet. And until I see that, I'm not picking them to win, because fool me once, fool me twice. That's it. I picked them to win the first 2 games and they didn't. So, those are my keys, obviously, and let's see, the most important thing is playing complimentary football, which they have not yet done. So, all right, coming up next, the one player, if I had my druthers, that I would love to see the Giants steal off the Cleveland Browns. It's not who you think, and I'll tell you who it is and why right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Download the Price Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Price Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus, as it's guaranteed. Price Picks, run your game. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. It is Friday. Happy Friday to everybody. Last show of the week, the New York Giants take on the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff. And the Giants, of course, in search of their first win of the 2024 season. If they go 0-3, oh my goodness, I think Monday, we're going to all need a group hug on Monday. You know, when we do this show, it's just, there's only so many ways you feel that you can talk about how bad the Giants have looked or what has gone wrong with them. And it just seems like whenever they fix one thing, something else pops up. So hopefully they fixed what they need to, and they can at least be competitive, if not victorious in this game, because it sure would be nice. I mean, especially with his short work week coming up and then having the Dallas Cowboys come in and you know what a big deal that is. And, you know, especially with a primetime game, you know, just not a good setup in my opinion. But if they win, that'll fix a lot of things. But anyway, who is the one player on the Cleveland Browns that if I had a say in it, I would want to steal? Now, this is a feature I think I'm going to do every Friday, because I think it's a fun feature, and I'd like to hear what you guys think. So if you're watching on YouTube, drop your comments below. If you're listening on the audio platforms and you want to, you know, contribute, send me a email. My contact information is in the show description notes. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about the one player that the Giants should steal from the opponent. All right, so who is my choice? It's not who you think, and probably who you're thinking is Myles Garrett. Now, Myles Garrett is a phenomenal and consistent type of pass rusher. Would love to have him on the team. But that being said, when I look at the Giants roster as it currently stands, what is the biggest weakness, ladies and gentlemen, on this Giants roster? Cornerback. Specifically cornerback 2. So therefore, my choice for the player that I would steal for the Giants off the Cleveland Browns would be Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward has appeared in 81 games, has 80 pass breakups, 15 interceptions, including 2 returned for a touchdown. He is a 3-time Pro Bowler. Can you imagine having a guy of that caliber opposite of Deonte Banks? Now, you know, Nick McLeod probably will not play again this week. Not that he's, you know, grabbed the job when it was there to be grabbed. Cordell Flott has not really grabbed it. Adoree Jackson was brought back on a 1-year deal. I don't think he's the long-term answer either. It's going to be draft or bust for the Giants when it comes to cornerback next year. But, you know, again, that's what drove my picking of Denzel Ward. I just think, you know, to get a cornerback of that quality and to plug him back there, you just made your defensive secondary so much better. And that's the one thing that I think the Giants maybe erred on. I know they tried to get a cornerback in free agency. They tried to get 3, didn't work out. But, you know, putting a veteran back there, and I know Adoree Jackson qualifies as a veteran, but I'm wondering if Adoree Jackson's career is on the downside there. But if you put somebody who's still pretty much in his prime and still is pretty much productive, what a difference it would make. And it would not only help the defensive backfield, but also the front 7 in, you know, their efforts. So just so much that they could do. And, you know, look, some of you might say, well, Denzel Ward's not exactly as stout as you would like him against the run. Okay, I get that. But you've got your front 7 to hopefully take care of the run. And if you're worried about, the cornerbacks and run support, unless they're coming up into, towards the line of scrimmage, you don't want them making tackles anyway, because that means that the running game got past the first and second levels. So I would gladly take Denzel Ward if he were to become available off the Browns roster, but just wishful thinking, I suppose. But anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast. Again, I appreciate you tuning in, spending part of your day with us here. For information on how to become a Blue Crew community member, that's my exclusive group of insiders. So I'm, trying to share with them at least once a day stuff that doesn't appear here on the podcast or in my articles, just little things. And then they're able to text me questions, and I text them back. I try to answer all their questions and texts. And whenever I have a special guest coming on, I usually tell them first, and I say, hey, what questions you got? So there's little things that I try to do to, for that community. It's a nice little community. And if you'd like information on how to join it, it's in the show description, or you can go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants for information. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for me. I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. And let's hope the Giants pull one out, an upset this weekend.